Welcome to Mia Horror Stories. To make it easier on your eyes, this video plays against a black screen, so you can close your eyes, get comfortable, and let the story take over. But don't relax too much. The ending might just catch you off guard. Stay with me until the very last word. The first time I heard it, I blamed the radiator. It was late, too late, when the white noise app on my phone hiccuped, and the apartment settled into that kind of thin quiet where every small sound becomes a headline. From beneath my mattress came a sibilant drift, like steam slithering through a pinhole, or bees trying to spell something. A string of breathy consonants. Then nothing. Then a soft return. The city outside kept doing what it always did, buses down Tremont. A droning streetlight. Someone on the corner arguing in a voice flattened by distance. But the sound under my bed had shape, like it wanted to be words and wasn't sure how. Maya Bennett, 27 woman. I rent the smaller bedroom in a third-floor walk-up in Mission Hill, Boston, with the kind of slanted floors that make a quarter roll on its own if you drop it near the kitchen. I'm 2 months into my first year as a night shift nurse at Brigham and Women's, which means my sleep is borrowed and easily stolen. I keep a laundry basket under the bed with my scrubs folded like blue flags. There's a vent half hidden by the frame and a strip of duct tape that refuses to stick even when I promise it new tape in the morning. Everyday motive: just sleep before tomorrow's 12. Private fear that I'll miss something obvious and stupid at work, at home, anywhere, and it will hurt someone. I track details obsessively to keep the fear at bay. Meds at 100, vitals at 130, oven off at 1904. Window latch clicked twice. I lifted my head and listened. The whispering brushed against the underside of the mattress, paused, then brushed again. Not a voice, I told myself. Pipes. The radiator coughed a metal throat clear across the room, as if raising its hand in agreement. The baseboard along the exterior wall kept the steady faint tick of heat expansion. I checked the screen. 2:41 a.m. The white noise app had looped back to the rain track. Cheap digital water sweeping through tinny speakers. Priya, I kept my voice low. Priya Nair, 26 woman. She lives in the larger bedroom down the hall, software engineer, the kind of person who can fall asleep mid-sentence and wake up with the rest of the sentence ready. She collects plants and ceramic mugs and has a laugh that opens windows. She's been my friend since sophomore year at UMass Amherst, when we both signed up for a required public speaking class and traded eye contact like contraband. A door hinge eased open. What? Her voice was a blanket tossed over a chair, crumpled, warm. Do you hear that? I asked. In your room? She hovered in my doorway, backlit by the hall's weak nightlight. Her hair was a messy halo. The hallway smelled like lavender detergent and the stale heat that accumulates in old buildings. She rubbed at the corner of one eye. It's the radiator. It's under the bed, I said, adding the way it sounded even as I said it. Like air through a straw, not constant, Priya crossed to the window. She tugged at the sash, checking the lock, a habit I recognized as mine, lately borrowed by her. The streetlights lit the glass in a rectangle the color of tea. Could be the vent. She pointed with her chin. Or the downstairs guy. What's his name? The med student who microwaves fish at midnight. Adam, I said. Adam Levin, 30, man. 3rd year at Tufts Med. I've met him 3 times in the stairwell, where he talks like he's always one floor above himself, ideas spilling ahead. Nice enough. Headphones permanently around his neck. He moved in a month after me and Priya, bringing a cast iron skillet he announced we should all use if we want to, which is how I learned he considers the whole building a team activity. The whisper rose again, this time a fraction clearer, as if leaning toward us. SSH, SSH, SSH. Priya crouched, squinting under the bed. You've got the laundry basket and a missing sock convention. Her hair swept the floor, picking up dust. No horror movie clown. Sorry to disappoint. I'm not, I started, then stopped. I was embarrassed to be the one interrupting her sleep over a sound that was probably something as boring as an air leak. Still, my skin had the prickled attention of standing under a streetlight you didn't realize just flickered. Forget it. Priya looked at me a second longer than usual. You've been jumpy this week, she said, not unkindly. You want me to move the bed? I've got it, I said. My voice landed a little too fast. Pride or stubbornness or both. I rolled to my stomach and reached down with my phone, flashlight on, angling the light into the narrow slot where the bed frame shadow swallowed the floor. The beam washed over the duct tape flap by the vent, which lifted and fell with a breath I could feel on my fingertips. Warm air. Harmless. Except the tape lifted in a way that suggested the air was coming from somewhere it shouldn't. The vent cover screws were a half turn shy of snug. I noticed the corner of an envelope, snagged beneath the frame where the slat met the rail. An old piece of mail, maybe, that fell and migrated. Found your culprit? Priya asked. Probably, I said. I aimed the light again. Dust clung to the phone like ash. The whisper happened once more, concentrated, and this time it did something I didn't like. It broke into tiny syllables, quick as shoes on tile. Not words, more like shape practice for words. The hair lifted along my forearms. Priya heard it too. I could tell by the way her mouth flattened into a line that tried to be casual. Definitely air, she said, too bright. Tape fix in the morning. Go to sleep. She padded back down the hall. The apartment went softer again. A car alarm chirped twice and then decided against it. Somewhere, someone laughed, cut short. I lay still, listening. The radiator ticked. The vent exhaled. The whisper threaded itself through both so neatly that if I had any less stubbornness, I could have let it pass as coincidence. I texted Evan because habit. Evan Cook, 29, man. He works logistics for a food distributor in Chelsea and has the patience of someone who spends his days on hold. He's been in my life for 2 years. We share passwords, playlists, and the bad habit of answering work email on weekends. He's in Worcester this week, helping his uncle with a bathroom renovation, which is how I have time to hear noises in the night. "You up?" I typed, thumbs hovering. "It's nothing. Ignore me." He replied with a typing bubble that blinked, then vanished. A minute later, he sent a photo of a tile saw in a garage, captioned, "Earplugs are God. You okay?" I started to write back, "Just the vent," then deleted. He'd drive back if I asked. He's that kind of person. Asking would make me that kind too, the kind who can't be alone without a witness. The room smelled faintly like hospital soap from the little bottle in my work bag. A clean lemon sterile that never fully washes out of your skin. My bedside table held the book I pretended to read, medical Spanish. A glass of water with 2 ice cubes melting into the same shape they always do. And the tiny brass Saint Christopher my grandmother gave me taped to a key. I could feel my own heartbeat in my mouth. The whispering, when it came again, synced with the radiator in a way that felt almost intentional, like one was teaching the other to talk. The air pushed against the loose tape, and it fluttered like a tongue. SSH, SSH, a stuttery hiss. I sat up and swung my feet to the rug. The rug is wool, Persian patterned, inherited from Priya's aunt. And if you spill tea on it, you can't tell. I put my palm flat on the mattress, feeling its cheap springs give back a polite ounce of resistance. My hands were not shaking. My hands were completely reasonable. I started laughing quietly at how serious I'd made the whole thing, and the laugh in that late hour, at that low volume, sounded like someone else humoring me. I slid off the bed and got on my knees. The floor was not quite clean, a bit of grit pressed into my kneecaps. I pulled the laundry basket out, folded scrubs soft against my wrist. The envelope I'd seen was yellowed at the edges, no stamp, the kind of office inter-department mail with holes punched like polka dots. I fished it free, dust ghosts rising. No writing on the outside. I set it on the nightstand, meaning to toss it in the morning. Then I did the thing I didn't want to do. I reached 2 fingers to the loose corner of the vent tape and lifted. Warm air, a steady breath. Behind it, the whispering seemed to expand, as if I'd turned up its volume a click. Not louder, exactly closer. I let the tape fall back. The tape smiled up at me, a slack, dumb grin. I could wake Priya and make it a team project. I could text Adam downstairs and ask if he was running some late-night meditation podcast titled, "You Are Not Actually Hearing This." I could take the vent off, look in, confirm there were only ducts and maybe a paint chip colony. Or I could choose a quieter route. Put the phone on voice memos. Slide it under the bed. Let it listen while I pretend not to. See if it catches the shape of words or catches me trying to hear them. I sat back on the rug and looked at the silver screws on the vent cover, the envelope on the nightstand, my own small life arranged in the spill of the streetlight. The sound under the bed sighed again, patient, like it had all night, and waited to see which version of me would stand up. The phone recorded nothing but the hiss of air. No syllables, no shapes, just a smear of sound like static tucked under the bed. I replayed the 5-minute clip twice before shoving the phone back into my nightstand drawer. The envelope sat on top, edges soft, paper thin as skin. I hadn't opened it. My eyes kept snagging on the empty circles along its fold like bullet holes. Morning blurred into afternoon. I tried to nap after my shift, but the whisper kept sliding under the mattress, whether real or remembered. I texted Priya when I gave up. Me tape still loose. You around? Priya WFH. Why? Me vent needs a screwdriver. 15 minutes later, she appeared in my doorway with a red Swiss Army knife and a mug of turmeric tea. The apartment hummed with her conference call bleeding through her laptop in the living room. She crouched by the vent. You want me to just tighten these? Yeah, and maybe replace the tape. I hovered, arms crossed, heart pounding like we were performing surgery. She twisted the screws, grimacing. These are practically finger loose. That normal. Shouldn't be. She peeled the tape back. Warm air flushed out, carrying a stale smell, something between paper and sweat. She wrinkled her nose. Smells like gym lockers. We both leaned closer. The duct opened into blackness, faintly resonant, as though it stretched further than it should in a building this small. Adam downstairs, I suggested. Priya tilted her head. If his vents open, maybe. But that doesn't explain why your screws are half out. Who's been messing with this? That question hung heavier than the smell. At 7 p.m., Adam knocked. Priya had texted him, half teasing, to confess his Midnight Whisper podcast. He stood in our kitchen with a backpack still strapped on, circles under his eyes, deeper than usual. I don't play anything at night, he said. His voice was scratchy, as though he'd been up 2 days. Maybe sound travels weird through these ducts. They connect rooms that don't make sense. Do they connect apartments? I asked. He shrugged. Probably. It's an old triple-decker. They cut corners. I watched him too closely. He noticed. You think I'm sneaking up here unscrewing vents? I don't have time to microwave dinner, let alone creep on neighbors. He laughed without humor. Priya leaned against the counter, arms folded. Then, why do we keep hearing voices? Adam blinked. Voices. Whispers, I corrected quickly. The word voices felt heavier. He shifted his backpack. Maybe you should talk to the landlord. Or, he hesitated. Just be careful opening stuff you find under there. You don't know who lived here before. That froze me. Why? Priya asked. Adam shook his head. This building been student housing forever. People leave junk. Some of it's not friendly junk. Then he left, muttering about an exam. Later, Priya nudged the envelope toward me with one fingertip. You going to open it? I stared at the paper. My chest tightened. Missing something obvious. That was my private fear. At the hospital, it meant meds, vitals, lives. Here, it meant ignoring a piece of evidence sitting inches from my bed. I slid my nail under the flap. The paper split with a soft rip. Inside, a few stapled sheets, damp at the corners. Typewritten. Names, dates. A crude floor plan of the building with certain units highlighted. Our unit circled in blue pen. Priya leaned closer. "What is this?" "Roster," I said, though it didn't look official. The names had notes scrawled beside them, some medical shorthand I half recognized. Insomnia, benzos, eval pending. "Tenant list?" she asked. I shook my head. "Patient list." Her mug clinked against the counter as she set it down. "You're joking." The floor plan suddenly felt tighter, like the walls had shifted a notch inward. That night, the whisper grew bolder. It came in bursts, like someone testing syllables against their tongue. Priya banged on the wall with her palm. "Adam texted, not me." "Stop." We stared at the phone screen, then at each other. "Could be someone in the basement," she said. "The laundry's down there," I replied. "And the boiler." Her lips pressed together. "You want to check?" I did not. But the envelope on the counter made doing nothing feel like negligence. I imagined a patient file circled around me, someone deciding I was too easy to overlook. We grabbed flashlights. Mine came from the med kit I keep in my bag, hers from a camping trip. The basement smelled like rust and detergent. Pipes crisscrossed low overhead, sweating condensation. Our footsteps echoed off concrete. A dryer hummed in the far corner, half-hearted, the sound masking small noises behind it. Priya swept her light. The vent shafts here were patched with mismatched tin, screws replaced at odd intervals. One panel gaped a fraction, edges bent outward as if pried open then half closed. Priya whispered, "That's not maintenance." Something scraped inside the duct. Not an animal metal on metal, deliberate. I felt the weight of choice press again. Call the landlord, the cops, keep watching. My fear of missing something twisted into a new shape, missing the moment before danger announced itself fully. Priya squeezed my arm. "We need to decide." Before I could answer, a faint light blinked from inside the vent, quick, like a phone screen tilted then darkened. The vent blinked dark again. Priya's flashlight beam jittered as her hand shook. I clamped my fingers tighter on her wrist, lowering the beam before whoever, or whatever, was inside knew we'd seen it. The basement smelled heavier down here. Layers of detergent, iron mold. We were standing by the boiler room door, ductwork fanning out above like silver veins. The pried open panel sat about shoulder height, bent at one corner, just wide enough that someone small could have wedged their hand or phone inside. Priya whispered, "We call the cops." "On what?" I hissed back. We heard a noise. "Found old papers." They'll roll their eyes. "You want to keep living with this?" I didn't. But dialing police meant questions. I wasn't sure I could answer without sounding unhinged. First attempt, tightening the panel. We decided to solve it the simplest way: reseal the duct. Priya dug the Swiss Army knife out of her hoodie pocket, flicked the screwdriver head, and handed it to me. The screws were stripped and the panel bent inward. I pressed it flush to the duct while she turned the tool. Metal scraped, threads resisted. Each twist sounded like a microphone feedback shriek in the silence. Faster, I whispered. I'm trying. The panel resisted staying flat, like air was pressing from inside, slow and steady. My shoulder burned holding it closed. Sweat rolled down the small of my back. Finally, one screw bit and caught. Another half turn. A third. The whisper rose from behind the metal, deliberate, like someone's mouth pressed to the seam. SSSHHH. Priya dropped the knife. It clanged across concrete. We bolted up the basement stairs, 2 at a time, breath loud enough to announce our retreat. The door slammed behind us. When we reached the apartment, my hands shook so badly I couldn't work the lock. Priya took the keys, jammed them in, twisted. We collapsed into the living room, lungs burning. For 10 minutes, neither of us spoke. The duct had resisted closure. Something inside hadn't wanted to be sealed. Second attempt, bringing in Adam. By morning, exhaustion clawed through me. I'd slept in 15-minute bursts on the couch, St. Christopher charm clenched in my fist. Priya stumbled out of her room with hair like static. Adam, she said, voice croaky. We rope him in. He knows ducts at least more than us. I hated the idea, but hated being alone more. We texted. He came up 2 hours later, hoodie zipped, smelling faintly of stale coffee. We explained. He frowned, knelt by the envelope on the table, flipped through the sheets. These are psych intake notes, he muttered. Old ones, like decades-old formatting. Someone kept a copy. Why is our unit circled? I asked. Adam shook his head. Don't know. But the med students used to rotate at psych wards. Maybe someone dumped stuff here. It was half a theory. We led him down to the basement. He crouched by the panel, tapping it with his knuckles. Air pressure's weird, but this bend, he shoved a finger through the gap, fishing. His sleeve caught on the jagged edge and ripped. Blood welled at his wrist. Shit, he muttered, pulling back. I grabbed a rag from the dryer, pressed it to his skin. The cut wasn't deep, but it bled more than I liked. He looked embarrassed. I'll bandage upstairs. But seriously, this is nothing. Ducts hiss. They echo. People hear stuff. Priya and I traded looks. Nothing, except he hadn't explained the light. Adam left. The basement felt emptier without him, but the panel still gaped. I caught myself picturing the way his wrist had fit inside, and whether someone else's hand might fit too easily. Misdirection, the footsteps. That night, I was brushing my teeth when footsteps tapped down the hall. Heavy, too heavy for Priya's usual shuffle. My pulse spiked. I flicked off the bathroom light and pressed my ear to the door. The steps paused, then softer, retreated. I cracked the door. Priya's door stood ajar. She was on the phone, packing, headset in, muttering about a software bug. Her socks scuffed the rug. The heavy steps had been her, layered with the sound of my own heartbeat. Harmless. My knees trembled anyway. Third attempt, evidence. Sleep deprived, we tried again. Set the phone recorder inside the duct. This time, Priya suggested lowering it on a charger cord through the gap. We looped it, pressed record, lowered. The hiss built louder, funneled. A low vibration hummed through the string into my hand, like someone humming faintly. Then clink, metal struck glass. The phone's flashlight winked out. The cord jerked hard, tugging from below. Pull, Priya cried. We yanked. The cord came back slack. The phone was gone. We froze, staring at the gap. Something had pulled it deeper. That's it, Priya whispered. We're not sleeping here. We pack bags, hotel it, tomorrow landlord. But leaving felt like abandoning evidence. My fear of missing something rooted me. If we left, whoever was inside might move on, erase their trail. The point of no return. At 3:12 a.m., the whispering came louder, not from the vent, but from directly beneath my bed. I slid off the couch, crawled toward my room. Priya followed, flashlight shaking in her grip. We listened, a definite human cadence, not words but rhythm, breath. The rug bulged slightly at the vent's edge. Air pulsed harder. I crouched, fingers on the loose screws. I could pull the panel off entirely, expose whatever was inside. Priya hissed, "Don't." But something inside me decided, no more halfway measures. No more listening, recording, sealing. Either we looked now, or we never would. I pressed the screwdriver to the first screw. It turned, slow and shrill. The whisper stuttered, then went silent. The duct waited, and by loosening that screw, I knew. Retreat was gone. We had committed to opening the space where the whisper lived. The last screw shrieked free. The vent cover sagged forward in my hand. Priya whispered, "Stop, please, just stop." But I was past stopping. The air spilling out was warmer, ranker, like someone's breath funneled through miles of stale cloth. I set the panel aside, crouched. The duct was a black mouth. My flashlight beam only reached 3 feet before dissolving. "See," Priya hissed. "Nothing. We close it, call the landlord." Then a faint scrape. Metal on metal, not echo, movement. Something shifted deeper in the duct. Priya grabbed my wrist. "We go upstairs, right now." Instead, I leaned in. I wanted to see, needed to. The missing phone was down there, my proof. Another scrape, closer. Then a soft clink, plastic against tin. My phone. A faint glow lit up the duct, sliding toward us like a lighthouse beam bouncing. The light paused, then jerked back, yanked by unseen hands. Priya gasped. Adrenaline drowned reason. I shoved my flashlight into the duct and crawled halfway inside. Tin edges scraped my shoulders. My heartbeat slammed in my ears. "Maya, don't." Priya yanked my ankle. Too late. My fingers grazed the phone cord. Something else grazed me back. A hand. Flesh, damp with sweat. Human. I screamed and kicked. My heel struck something soft, then bone. A grunt echoed up the duct. The phone clattered forward. I snatched it, scrambled backward, elbows and shoulders tearing on jagged tin. A hand shot out of the darkness after me. Thin, pale wrist streaked with grime. Fingers clawed the rug under my bed. Nails split. The hand trembled, more desperate than violent. Priya shrieked, slammed the screwdriver down. The metal stabbed into flesh between knuckles. The hand yanked back, leaving a smear of blood across the wood. Silence. We collapsed on the rug, chests heaving. My arms burned with shallow cuts. Priya's face was chalk white, screwdriver still in her grip. Then a sound from below, not whispering, coughing. Wet, rattling, human. We bolted for the basement, flashlight beams jittering over the walls. The duct network stretched low, bending like intestines. At the far end, near the pried-open panel, a man crouched, mid-30s, gaunt, shirtless, ribs like a cage, skin slick with sweat. His face streaked in dust, hair matted. He clutched his bleeding hand, eyes wide with terror. Not at us, at the light. Priya's voice cracked. "Who the hell are you?" He shook his head, backing deeper into the crawl space. His voice rasped raw. Don't tell, please. They'll take me back." "Back where?" I demanded. The ward, his pupils blew wide. "They watch. They whisper so I'm not alone." He lurched to his feet, staggering down the duct tunnel. Not fast, but frantic. I moved to follow. Priya blocked me. "He's dangerous." "He's sick," I snapped. "And he's been in our walls." Footsteps thundered overhead. Adam burst down the basement stairs, one arm bandaged. He froze at the sight of us, of the blood trail, of the man retreating into duct shadows. "What the fuck?" Adam breathed. The man tripped, smacked hard against the tin. The duct rang like a bell. He crawled again, bleeding. Adam ran after him, but the duct twisted narrow. "It's a dead end," Adam yelled. "He's cornered." We converged. The man pressed his back to the metal, breathing like an animal, eyes darting. His chest heaved. My phone's flashlight beam illuminated the papers in his lap, pages torn from the envelope. He clutched them like scripture. "Don't take me," he rasped. "I belong here now." "No," I said softer. "You're hurt. You need help." He bared teeth, not in a smile. His free hand fumbled at the duct seam, prying. His nails shredded. He screamed once, high and panicked. Adam lunged. The man swung wild, fist catching Adam's jaw. Adam reeled back. Priya grabbed his hoodie, yanked him upright before he cracked his skull on concrete. The man tried to bolt past me. I raised the St. Christopher keychain without thinking, like it might shield me. Instead, the charm snagged his shoulder. His skin split where it caught. He howled, shoved me against the duct. Pain spiked down my ribs. Instinct took over. I jammed the flashlight beam in his eyes. He reeled, blinded, tripped over the bent panel. His temple cracked against the corner with a sick thud. He crumpled, still breathing but shallow. The three of us stood panting, the air thick with iron and sweat. My phone buzzed in my pocket from where I'd shoved it. The voice memo had run the whole time, red wave still recording. No whispers now, just his ragged breath. We argued in short bursts, adrenaline making every word sharp. "Call 911, Priya said. "They'll blame us," Adam shot back, clutching his jaw. "He's bleeding out," I snapped. My ribs screamed when I bent to check his pulse. Strong enough. But the cut on his hand was deep, screwdriver puncture still oozing. My scrubs were upstairs, clean cloth inside. "We can't leave him." "Then what?" Priya demanded. "What if he wakes?" I pressed my palm to his forehead. Feverish, delirious. Whoever he was, he couldn't stay hidden in ducts anymore. I pulled my phone free, thumbed 911. When the dispatcher answered, my voice came out steadier than I felt. "We need an ambulance. Basement of 274 Hillside. There's a man injured. He's been living in our ventilation system." The words sounded insane, even as I said them. But they were true. By the time sirens grew near, Priya had slumped against the dryer, hands still trembling. Adam leaned against the wall, jaw swelling, muttering curses under his breath. I sat on the concrete floor, ribs throbbing, eyes locked on the unconscious man. His chest rose and fell, shallow but certain. Blood streaked the duct. The envelope papers fluttered where they'd fallen, names and notes, and our unit circled. For the first time in days, the building was silent. No whispers, just the waiting. And even with the ambulance on its way, with proof breathing in front of us, the silence felt heavier than the sound had ever been. The ambulance lights pulsed blue and red across the brick walls, throwing our shadows long and broken across the basement floor. EMTs crowded the narrow space, their boots splashing through dust and spilled blood. One of them, a woman with gray streaking her hair, crouched by the man's body and barked orders. "Pressure dressing. IV line. He's tacky." We were shunted aside, blinking under their headlamps. I leaned against the dryer, every rib in my chest buzzing with ache. Priya wrapped her arms tight around herself, like she was trying to fold small enough to disappear. Adam sat on the concrete step, jaw swollen, his expression locked between disbelief and anger. The man stirred once, tried to speak, but the EMT's palm pressed firm against his chest. "Save your strength." They strapped him onto the stretcher. His eyes rolled past me, glassy and frantic, as if he wanted to memorize my face. The envelope pages lay scattered nearby, ignored in the rush. I gathered them, hands shaking, slipped them back inside. 2 uniformed officers arrived after the ambulance left, clipboards out, questions sharp and quick. Name. Where do you live? Describe what you saw. I stuck to facts. We heard noises, found the vent tampered with, discovered a man inside. I didn't mention whispers shaping syllables. I didn't mention nights of lost sleep, or how my fear of missing something had kept me prying instead of leaving. Priya spoke in clipped bursts. Her voice rasped thin from adrenaline. Adam's answers turned defensive, as though every question carried a personal accusation. The officers wrote it all down, their pens scratching steady. "We'll need you all to come by the station tomorrow for statements," one said. "For now, lock your doors. Don't touch the ducts until maintenance comes." Priya let out a sharp laugh at that. "Like I'll sleep here." The officer didn't smile. At 4:30 a.m., the apartment was ours again. Priya crashed on the couch, curled under 2 blankets, her face turned toward the wall. Adam retreated to his unit, muttering that he needed to rethink living in this circus. I sat at the kitchen table, St. Christopher charm in my palm, the envelope beside me. My phone was sticky with blood where I'd grabbed it from the duct. The voice memo still ran until I stopped it. The waveform was jagged, full of gasps, curses, grunts. When I replayed the final 30 seconds, I could hear it clearly. The man whispering. Not nonsense. Words. "Don't take me back." His voice trembled, then my own screaming, then silence. I deleted the file. Morning made the apartment look ordinary again. Sunlight found the kitchen window, lighting up the chipped counter and Priya's mug abandoned in the sink. She rose groggy, hair tangled, eyes rimmed red. "What happens now?" she asked. "Statements, landlord patching ducts, probably new locks. And us." Her voice broke a little on the last word. "We go back to work," I said. The answer felt cruel, but it was true. My shift started in 6 hours. I couldn't explain to my patients that I hadn't slept because someone had been whispering beneath my bed. Priya nodded, but I knew she wasn't convinced. She scanned the ceiling as if listening for sounds the sun might muffle. Adam came by mid-afternoon, a butterfly bandage stretched across his cheekbone. "Cops called me this morning. Guys in the hospital, psych hold. They say he won't be charged with anything. He broke into the ducts," Priya snapped. "He's not competent," Adam countered. His voice was flat. "He's been living down there for months. Landlord knew something was off. Never did shit." That detail landed like a stone. The screws loosened, the tape lifting. All the little signs someone ignored. "Anyway," Adam muttered, "I'm moving. Don't care if I lose the deposit." When he left, Priya turned to me. "We should too," but I couldn't answer. Moving meant admitting the apartment wasn't just cracked, but unlivable. It meant hauling boxes, paying fees, starting over. My ribs ached with every breath. I told myself I needed time to heal before making decisions. That night, the apartment lay still. Priya locked every window and door twice. I lay on the couch again, blanket tight, the vent in my room still open, screws in a dish on the counter. At 2 a.m., a bus groaned down Tremont, brakes squealing. The radiator ticked. My body waited tense for a whisper that didn't come. I almost drifted until the envelope shifted on the counter where I'd left it. Not loudly, just a soft slide, paper against wood. The draft from the window, maybe. I closed my eyes, told myself not to check. 1 week later, the duct in my room was sealed with new screws and a metal patch. The landlord avoided my eyes when I asked about past tenants. People come and go, he said. Old building. Weird stuff happens. At the hospital, I caught myself checking vents in patient rooms. Every hum of machinery sounded like breath. Every shadow beneath a bed carried weight. My notes grew longer, obsessive. I triple-checked meds, wrote times to the minute. Missing something small no longer felt abstract. Priya stayed with her sister 3 nights out of 7. When she came home, she kept her bedroom door shut, laptop on her knees until morning. Adam's unit stood empty. His skillet still sat in the shared cupboard, dusty. The silence inside the building felt different now, thicker, padded. No whispers. Yet, when I set my head down at night, I could still feel the air push faintly against the rug, like a breath held just out of hearing range. I told myself it was nothing, but I never slid the envelope back under the bed. Welcome to Mia Horror Stories. To make it easier on your eyes, this video plays against a black screen, so you can close your eyes, get comfortable, and let the story take over. But don't relax too much. The ending might just catch you off guard. Stay with me until the very last word. The elevator chimed softly, and the metal doors slid apart with a gentle hiss. A stale, recycled air washed over Jake before the doors closed again behind him. He glanced at the panel, 6th floor, just like every morning this week. His fingers, cramped from clutching a cheap canvas bag, relaxed a bit. The usual hum of the building settled around him. Somewhere, an air conditioning vent clicked on, and through the thin walls, muffled voices floated up from the lobby. Jake let out a slow breath, blinking against the dim, fluorescent lighting inside the elevator car. He wasn't late, yet, but the day already felt heavy. The usual crowd of people waiting for the elevator on his floor was gone this morning, replaced by an uncomfortable stillness. Not the sort of quiet that comes with empty spaces, but the kind that prickled the skin. Like something was just off, even if he couldn't say what. The doors slid open again, but it wasn't the 6th floor. He was on the 4th. A hallway stretched out, the kind you see in any mid-century office building. Beige paint cracked at the edges, cheap carpet dulled by years of footsteps. Fluorescent bulbs flickered weakly above, casting uneven pools of light. The smell was different here. A faint mustiness mixed with a sharp tang, something like burnt plastic or overheated wiring. It wasn't his floor. Jake's heart bumped hard in his chest, but he told himself to breathe, to think it through. Maybe the elevator malfunctioned. The doors were still open, the elevator waiting for him to step out. The panel inside blinked erratically. No call buttons lit. No floor numbers shifted. Jake looked back, the elevator still ready to close. Should he get out? Or press the button to close the doors and try again? He felt the weight of the canvas bag pressing against his ribs, his keys jangling inside. A faint noise from the hallway made him tense. A soft shuffle, maybe footsteps, or just the building settling. He couldn't tell. "Hello," he called, voice quieter than he expected. No answer. The corridor looked empty. He glanced at the panel again, then at the doors, then back down the hallway. A choice. Jake didn't think about it much until the moment it happened. But stepping out felt less like curiosity and more like a sudden, reflexive decision. Maybe he was tired, or maybe the silence tugged at him. Whatever it was, his foot moved forward, the elevator doors sliding shut behind him with a soft thud. He was alone. The hallway stretched on. No sign of other people. No sounds except the low hum of the building's ventilation system. Jake wiped his palms on his jeans, his breath shallow. The flickering lights overhead threw half shadows on the walls, making the peeling paint look worse than it was. He reached into his bag and pulled out his phone. No signal. That was the moment his stomach sank. He tried again, more forceful this time, nothing. Great, no service, just his luck. Jake looked back the way he'd come. The elevator doors were gone, replaced by a blank wall. No buttons, no panel. No sign of an elevator shaft. His pulse ticked faster. "Okay," he muttered. "Just a weird building glitch." But the place didn't feel right. Not the usual late morning office hum. The lights flickered again, the buzzing becoming more insistent. Then came a sound, barely more than a whisper, but definite. Footsteps, far down the hallway. Not fast, not urgent, slow, measured. Jake froze. The footsteps stopped suddenly, a soft scrape against the floor. Jake's eyes scanned the dim corridor, but no one appeared. He swallowed hard. A voice, low and uncertain, came from around the corner. "Hello?" Jake stepped forward, his voice cracking slightly. "Yeah, hello. I'm not sure where I am. This isn't my floor." The silence stretched long enough to make the hairs on his neck prick. Then a figure appeared. A woman, maybe mid-30s, her expression a mix of relief and suspicion. She held a steaming cup of coffee that sent a thin trail of steam curling upward. Her clothes were professional, but tired-looking. "Lost, huh?" she said with a nervous laugh. "You're not the only one." Jake exhaled, a bit of the tension easing. "I'm Jake. Clara." She glanced back the way she'd come, eyes wary. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but we should probably stick together. Better than wandering alone in this weird place." Jake nodded, the weight of his bag suddenly heavier. Clara pulled her coat tighter around her as they moved down the hallway, her footsteps quick but careful on the thin carpet. Jake followed close behind, eyes flicking to every shadow, every flicker of light overhead. The buzzing in the ceiling vents grew louder, almost mechanical, like a warning. "This floor shouldn't even be here," Clara said, voice low. "I work on the 7th. Never heard of a fourth like this, at least not one that looks like this. Jake nodded, the irregular hum in his ears making him feel off balance. He shifted his bag and tried his phone again. Still no bars, no messages, not even the little spinning icon that promised data connection eventually. "Any idea what's going on?" he asked. Clara glanced at him, eyes sharp. "Not really. But if you're hopping this is just some glitch, I wouldn't count on it. The building been in weird shape for a while." Jake stopped. "What do you mean?" She shrugged, like the weight of it was too much for a coffee break conversation. "Old wiring, bad inspections. I heard the HVAC's been acting up, people getting sick, headaches. Maintenance always delays repairs." Jake rubbed his neck. "Great." As they rounded the corner, the air grew warmer, stale, like the building was holding its breath. A faint smell of smoke drifted, not quite from fire, but close enough to put nerves on edge. "Do you smell that?" Jake whispered. "Yeah," Clara replied, her voice tighter now. "Electrical. Probably overheated something." They found a door labeled utility closet, cracked open, a thin wisp of smoke slipping out. Jake peered inside. The room was filled with humming machinery, wires sparking faintly near the ceiling. "Should we call someone?" he asked. Clara shook her head. "No signal, no elevator. No one knows we're here." Jake's stomach churned. "What if the fire alarms don't work?" She sighed. "Exactly what I'm afraid of. That place could burn down and no one'd hear it." The lights flickered violently, then went out altogether. A pulse of black. They froze. Then emergency lights blinked on, casting a harsh red glow over everything. The smell thickened. Heat prickled Jake's skin. "We need to get out now," Clara said. Jake's throat felt tight. His eyes darted toward the hallway end, but it was swallowed in shadow. "Which way?" he asked. Clara pointed to a narrow stairwell door, the metal frame scratched and dented. "That. Stairs always work." Jake moved toward it, but a loud crack made them both jump. From deeper in the hallway, a section of ceiling panel gave way, dust and plaster raining down in a small cloud. "Shit," Clara hissed. "Building unstable." Jake's mind raced. His fear of losing control pressed on him. He hated feeling powerless, trapped. But right now, all he wanted was out. They reached the stairwell door and pushed. Locked. "No way," Clara said, jiggling the handle. "It's jammed." Jake pulled at his bag strap, frustration building. Try to find a fire extinguisher or something to force it. Clara nodded and stepped back into the hallway. Jake followed, but as they moved, the floor beneath them creaked, a hollow groan that seemed to echo endlessly. Suddenly, a faint voice came from somewhere behind the door. They'd left closed, the elevator shaft, maybe. "Help!" Jake stopped, heart slamming. "Did you hear that?" Clara's face went pale. "Someone else is here." Jake swallowed. "We have to find them." "But we don't even know who," Clara said, voice tight. "Could be anyone." His mind jumped to the worst. Trapped workers, someone hurt, or worse, someone dangerous. The hallway suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. "Let's just get to the stairwell," Jake said, voice firmer than he felt. Clara hesitated, then nodded. They moved fast, the emergency lights flashing, casting long, jerky shadows. At the stairwell door, Jake tried again. Still locked. The pounding in his chest grew louder. Panic threatened to take hold. "Think it's the building," Clara said, breathing hard. "It's been condemned in parts for a reason." Jake swallowed down the panic, gripping the cold metal door frame. "We have to find another way," he said. Suddenly, the power flickered. The emergency lights blinked out. Pitch black. Jake's hands shot out, grabbing Clara's arm. "Don't move," he whispered. A metallic scrape echoed down the hall, slow and deliberate. They stood frozen as the sound approached, every second stretching thin. Then a voice, calm and measured, called out, "You're not supposed to be here." Jake's breath caught. Clara squeezed his hand. "We're leaving." "Not so fast," the voice said. A figure stepped into the dim red light, face obscured by shadows. There was no smile. Jake's control faltered, the familiar fear swallowing him. He realized that his worst fear wasn't just being trapped. It was losing control to someone else who wanted him there. The figure's shadow lingered in the harsh red glow, like a blot on the faded wallpaper. Jake's mind scrambled for something, anything to hold on to. Clara tugged his sleeve, her eyes wide, voice barely above a whisper. "We can't stay here." Jake nodded, though the tension had already coiled tight inside him. They needed a plan. They were trapped between a locked stairwell and a malfunctioning elevator shaft, with some unknown person watching them from the dark. The hallway stretched both ways, but behind them was where the elevator had vanished, a blank wall now, cold and indifferent. "We have to find another exit," Jake said. His voice was steadier than he felt. Clara took a breath, scanning the area. There was a fire door back toward the end of the hall, near that maintenance room. "I saw it when I first got here." Jake glanced down the hallway they'd come from, past the cracked utility closet with the sparking wires. The smoke smell was thicker now, the burnt plastic bite lingering in his nostrils. "Let's try that." They moved fast, feet barely touching the threadbare carpet. The red emergency lights flickered overhead, casting the walls in a sickly glow. The temperature seemed to rise with every step, sweat prickling at Jake's temples. As they neared the door Clara mentioned, a sudden crashing noise erupted somewhere behind them. They whipped around just in time to see a stack of metal filing cabinets topple, sending papers fluttering like dead leaves across the hall. Jake's heart pounded. "That wasn't the figure," Clara said sharply. "No way." The hallway was empty now, save for the scattered papers dancing under the weak emergency lights. Jake crouched, grabbing a crumpled page. It was a work order, stamped with the building's name, dated 2 months ago. Notes scrawled in the margin mentioned critical wiring issues and urgent repair. "Looks like the building's falling apart," Jake said grimly. "This isn't some haunted floor, it's a death trap." Clara exhaled, running her fingers through her hair. And whoever that was back there, maybe they're just another employee stuck here, or worse. Jake glanced at the fire door. It was marked with a simple push bar. He reached out, pressing down, but it didn't budge. "Locked," he muttered. "Try your keys," Clara suggested. Jake dug in his bag, fumbling through keys, until he found one marked maintenance, a last hope from his company-issued keyring. He slid it into the lock and turned. Nothing. "Great," he said, frustration tightening his jaw. No luck. The smell of smoke was thicker now, acrid and sharp. The emergency lights flickered again and sputtered, threatening to go dark. Clara tapped her phone against her palm, a nervous habit. Still no signal. Jake took a deep breath, the heat making it hard to think. His muscles ached, and the weight of the bag was suddenly unbearable. "Okay, plan B," Jake said, voice shaky. "Let's check the maintenance room." They slipped through the cracked utility closet door, avoiding the sparking wires as best they could. The room was cramped and cluttered old tools, broken fans, and a half-empty toolbox scattered across the floor. The air was thick and hot, making Jake's head swim. Near the back, a rusty panel hung open, revealing a jumble of wires, some melted, others sparking faintly. "Looks worse than I thought," Clara muttered. Jake spotted a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. He grabbed it, feeling a slight surge of hope. "Maybe we can use this to force the fire door open," he said. Clara nodded. "Or pry open the stairwell door if we find it again." Jake glanced back toward the hallway. A faint tapping noise echoed from somewhere deep inside the building, rhythmic and slow, like someone knocking. His skin prickled. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Clara nodded, eyes narrowing. Could be someone signaling for help or trying to scare us. They left the maintenance room cautiously, extinguisher in hand, and headed back toward the main corridor. As they approached the stairwell door again, Jake's hands trembled as he tested the handle. This time, it moved slightly under pressure. "Got something," he said, tugging harder. The door creaked open a crack, but then slammed shut suddenly with a loud bang. Clara stumbled back, hitting the wall. "Jesus," she gasped. "Wind." Jake's breath hitched. He reached for the handle again. It was locked fast now. "What the hell?" A cold draft seeped through the cracks, carrying a faint sound voices, distant and muffled. Jake pressed his ear to the door. "Help," a whispered voice came through, desperate and urgent. His pulse sped. "Someone's trapped," he said. "We need to get them out." Clara looked uneasy. "Or maybe it's a trick. We don't know who it is." Jake's hands shook. His mind reeled with every possible scenario. A trapped worker, a panicked visitor, or a stranger with unknown intentions. Suddenly, the red emergency lights flickered out again. The hallway plunged into near-total darkness. Jake's breath hitched. He fumbled in his bag for his phone's flashlight. The beam was weak, flickering. Then from down the hall, a sharp clang echoed, metal hitting metal. Jake pointed the light toward the sound. 2 rats darted across the floor, disappearing into a cracked vent. Clara laughed nervously. False alarm. Jake forced a smile, though his nerves frayed like worn rope. They backed away from the stairwell door and moved down the hallway toward the fire door. As they reached it, Jake caught sight of a cracked window, frosted over, but large enough to offer a glimpse outside. The sky was gray clouds thick and low. No sun, no movement. Jake pressed his forehead to the glass, heart sinking. They were trapped, cut off from the outside world. Clara rested a hand on his shoulder. We have to keep moving. Jake swallowed hard, feeling exhaustion seep into his bones. His throat was raw, dry from shallow breaths. He glanced back one last time. The figure from before had vanished, but the footsteps were back, slow, steady, circling somewhere just beyond sight. And the locked stairwell door loomed between them and escape. There was no turning back. The sharp scrape of metal on metal echoed through the thickening haze. As Jake pressed the fire extinguisher against the stairwell door, hands trembling but determined. Clara stood just behind him, her breath coming in quick bursts, eyes darting toward the dark hallway where the figure had vanished and reappeared in his mind like a shadowed threat. The smoke was heavier now, acrid and biting at their throats, curling under their noses like a warning they couldn't ignore. The flickering red emergency lights cast an unsteady glow, and the low hum of failing electricity was punctuated by distant groans of the building settling or coming apart. Jake swung the extinguisher with all his strength. The metal clanged against the doorframe. The handle rattled. The door gave a tiny creak, then stuck fast. "Keep going," Clara urged, voice harsh with strain. A sudden cough racked Jake's chest, sharp and painful. The heat pressed against his back, sweat stinging his eyes. His arms shook as he struck the door again, each blow slower, more desperate. "Jake," Clara said, her voice cracking. "Look out." Before he could react, a piece of plaster cracked loose from above, slamming into his shoulder. The impact knocked the extinguisher from his grip, sending it skittering across the floor. He stumbled, pain blooming bright and hot through his skin. Clara grabbed his arm, pulling him back as the ceiling groaned ominously. "We don't have much time," she shouted. Jake's lungs burned, every breath a ragged fight. The smoke filled the hallway, swallowing sound and sight. "Maybe the trapped person can open it from the other side," Clara said. Jake nodded, voice hoarse. "We have to try." He leaned close to the door, pressing his ear against the warped wood. "Hey, can you hear us?" He shouted over the roar in his ears. A faint scratching came from the other side. "Help," a trembling voice whispered. "Please." Jake felt a flash of something sharp fear, hope, and then the unmistakable jingle of keys. "Where'd you get those?" Clara asked, eyebrows knitted. A faint metallic click, then the lock turned. The door swung open a crack. On the other side, a young man, pale and shaking, stumbled through. Cuts ran down his arm, dried blood crusted on his shirt. "I'm Mike," he gasped. "Got stuck when the power went out. Heard you banging." Jake and Clara exchanged a glance. Relief, maybe, but the danger wasn't gone. Behind Mike, the corridor stretched into darkness, thick smoke curling, like tendrils from somewhere deeper. "We have to get out," Clara said, voice low but firm. Jake steadied himself, wiping sweat from his brow. The ache in his shoulder throbbed sharply. They moved quickly, Mike leading the way. The building moaned around them, ceiling panels rattling, loose wires sparking above. Every step was a gamble on whether the floor would hold. Suddenly, the distant roar of rushing air filled the hall. Jake's heart jumped. "What was that?" he asked. Mike pointed ahead, face pale. A water pipe burst on the 5th floor, flooding down this way. A rush of cold water surged from the stairwell entrance, spilling into the hall like a tidal wave. Jake's feet skidded, clutching the wall for balance. Clara shouted, "Go back, the other exit." Jake shook his head. "We don't have time." The hallway behind them was filling fast. Water hissed against electrical panels, sparks flying dangerously. "Follow me," Mike urged, stepping over cables dripping with water. They turned down a narrower corridor, damp and shadowed, the air heavy with smoke and the metallic tang of electricity. Jake's head spun, fatigue pressing down like a weight. His breathing was shallow, the cuts on his arms stung from the heat. Clara stumbled, gasping. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, steadying her. She shook her head, eyes wide. I'm fine, just tired." Mike paused at a heavy metal door marked emergency exit. Jake tried the handle. It was locked. "Damn it," Mike muttered, digging into his pocket for keys. Jake's eyes flicked to the extinguisher, now lying discarded nearby. "We can use that," he said, urgency sharpening his voice. Mike nodded, grabbed the extinguisher, and slammed it against the lock. The metal resisted, but after a few strikes, the door creaked open. Fresh air rushed in, cool and sharp against their overheated skin. They spilled through into the stairwell, the smell of smoke fatting slightly behind them. Jake slumped against the wall, the pain in his shoulder and chest screaming now, exhaustion crashing over him like a wave. Clara leaned on Mike, tears streaking down her face. "We made it," she whispered, voice trembling. But the danger wasn't over. Behind them, the building groaned louder, a deep, rumbling crack splitting the air. Jake looked up just in time to see part of the ceiling collapse. In the corridor, they'd fled. Dust and debris filled the stairwell entrance, blocking their path back. He swallowed hard, the cold grip of fear tightening around his chest. "We're trapped," Mike said quietly. Jake's legs felt weak. Clara blinked rapidly, swallowing back the panic. The three of them stood in the stairwell, the only way out a narrow, winding staircase leading down into shadow. Jake's shoulder throbbed unbearably, and his breath came in shallow gasps. But he forced himself to move. One step, then another. The building shook again, a tremor that rattled the walls and sent loose plaster raining down. Jake looked back once, the dark hallway sealed behind rubble. No elevator, no other exit, just the stairs and whatever waited for them below. The stairwell's narrow concrete steps felt unforgiving beneath Jake's trembling feet as he descended, each breath shallow and ragged. Clara and Mike followed close behind, faces pale but determined, their shadows flickering against the grimy walls. Outside, the muffled wail of sirens cut through the thick night air. When they finally spilled out onto the cracked pavement, the chaos of emergency crews unfolded before them. Fire trucks with hoses spraying the building's scorched exterior. Paramedics tending to the shaken and injured. The streetlights glared with unnatural sharpness, the normal hum of a city evening already feeling oddly distant. Jake sagged against a fire truck's cold metal side, the dull throb in his shoulder, now a relentless ache. His shirt was smeared with dirt and dried sweat, the cuts along his arms raw but not deep. Clara sat nearby on the curb, knees drawn up, her eyes glassy as she stared ahead. Mike was wrapped in a blanket, visibly younger than Jake and Clara, clutching his arm where the wound had bled through his shirt. The medics worked efficiently, but their calm professionalism only deepened the surreal edge of the scene. Jake's mind refused to slow, replaying the moments inside the building, the flickering red lights, the locked stairwell door, the smell of burning plastic and wet concrete, the shadowed figure whose face he never fully saw. "Can you tell me what happened?" a young paramedic asked gently, kneeling beside Jake. Jake blinked, the sharp edges of memory hitting him like fresh bruises. "I got stuck on a floor that didn't exist," he said, voice tight. "The elevator took me somewhere else. The building was falling apart. There was smoke, fire, flooding. We had to find a way out." The medic nodded, glancing at Clara and Mike, who were answering similar questions. Jake caught Clara's eye. She gave a small, tired smile, but it didn't reach her face. "We're lucky," she murmured. "Could have been so much worse." Minutes passed in a blur of medical checks and police officers taking statements. The building's owners had been notified. The city inspector's office was already closing off the block. The official story was a failure in the building's electrical system that caused both a fire and flooding, trapping several people on a disused floor, an unregistered floor. Some called it hidden in the blueprints, but never fully cleared or maintained. Jake found himself staring at the tape that cordoned off the building, the harsh yellow strip stretching taut like a barrier between the world he'd known and the one he'd just escaped. At one point, a police officer approached Clara. "Ma'am, can you confirm the identity of the man who helped you?" Clara hesitated. "Mike," she said, "he works here, was trapped." The officer nodded, jotting down notes. Jake's stomach twisted. The mystery figure who had appeared earlier, the man who warned them, had never been mentioned again. He wondered briefly if Mike was connected or just another victim. The question lingered, unanswered. Later at the hospital, Jake sat on a stiff plastic chair, his shoulder bandaged and ice wrapped around the swelling bruise. Clara paced the small waiting room, phone pressed to her ear, arranging for a ride home. Mike was being treated for dehydration and minor cuts, but was expected to recover quickly. Jake's thoughts were tangled, raw nerves humming just beneath the surface. He'd always feared losing control, being trapped physically or emotionally. But now he realized how fragile the veneer of normalcy really was. The building's failures mirrored his own unraveling calm. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent. A janitor wheeled a cart down a quiet hospital hallway, his footsteps soft against the linoleum. He paused briefly outside a storage closet. The door cracked open just enough to reveal tangled wires and a faint smell of burnt plastic. He glanced over his shoulder, then shut the door firmly, turning away without a word. Jake's eyes closed briefly, exhaustion pulling at him. The ordeal was over, but something inside him had shifted. The elevator had opened to a floor that shouldn't have existed, and he wasn't sure the story was done. That's tonight's story. If it gives you chills, make sure to like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and tap the bell so you never miss what's coming next. And if you're still brave enough, there are more dark tales waiting for you right here on the channel. Go watch another if you dare. Hey friends, it's your girl Mia. This is Mia Horror Stories, and tonight's story, When the Lights Stayed Off Too Long, is told in darkness. The screen will stay black, so you can simply listen, imagine, and feel every moment without distraction. Trust me, the build-up matters, and the ending is where the real chill hides. So don't look away, and don't leave early. Rain tapped a rhythm against the windows, hard enough to make the streetlights blur, soft enough that it almost felt like white noise. But something was off. The kitchen light, the one that always buzzed faintly, flickered and went out for a solid 10 seconds. 10 seconds that made everything seem slower. Tom noticed first, pausing mid-sip of his lukewarm coffee, staring at the dangling cord above the counter. Did the fuse blow? He muttered, though he already knew the answer. The breaker box downstairs hummed normally. Nothing had tripped. Maybe it's the storm, said Mara, standing by the window with her arms crossed. Her brown hair was damp at the ends, a few strands sticking to her forehead. She squinted into the rain, watching water sheet off the asphalt. Lights always freak out in storms. You remember last week? Tom didn't reply. Instead, he kept watching the dark ceiling where the light should have been. There was something in the shadow near the corner of the room, almost a movement, though his brain tried to rationalize it as a trick of the dim light. Mara's voice pulled him back. You're starring like, she stopped, frowning. Never mind. It's probably nothing. Just go check the breaker if you want peace of mind. He stood and walked toward the stairs. His sneakers squeaked on the linoleum, each step louder than it should be. Rain slid down the window in streaks, making reflections ripple over the tile floor. Tom's stomach tightened slightly, not from the flicker, but from a quiet, irrational sense that something in the apartment wasn't right. Something mundane, something fixable, yet just out of reach. Tom, 34, male, works in IT support. Practical, measured, usually calm under stress. His private fear, losing control of situations he believes he can manage. He hates uncertainty and has a habit of overthinking small anomalies. Mara, 32, female, freelance graphic designer. Creative, sarcastic, grounded, with a touch of stubbornness. Her private flaw, a reluctance to admit vulnerability, even when it's necessary. She masks anxiety with humor and rationality. They live together in a third-floor apartment in a nondescript building in Portland, Oregon. The walls were thin, the pipes groaned with age. Everything was familiar. And yet, that flicker had cracked their routine, if only slightly. As Tom descended, the apartment door to the hallway creaked open. Their neighbor, Harold, shuffled past, umbrella dripping water into the lobby. Harold, 67, male, retired electrician, always muttering about some building problem or another, paused mid-step and glanced up at the stairwell. "Y'all having trouble with the lights again? Old wiring in this place. It's a nightmare." Tom nodded. "Yeah, flickered for a bit." Harold squinted. "Stormy nights, they always do. Just don't go messing with the fuse board if you're not sure. Fire hazard, you know." He shuffled on. The apartment was mostly quiet again after that, save for the rain. But now, in the hallway, there was a faint, metallic smell, like something overheated. Tom crouched near the breaker box, testing each switch. Everything clicked normally. Nothing was hot. Still, a tiny shiver ran down his back. The faint sound of water dripping somewhere, maybe the pipes, echoed through the walls. Mara leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. The screen cast a weak light onto her face, shadows making her eyes look slightly hollow. "You're sure it's nothing?" she asked. Tom ran a hand through his hair. "I'm sure. I mean, yeah, the flicker freaked me out a second, but nothing physically wrong. Everything checks out." "Good, because I have deadlines," she muttered. "And I'd like to get through a project without worrying if the ceiling's gonna collapse, or if—" She stopped abruptly, glancing toward the kitchen. "Okay, that shadow again. Did you see that?" Tom followed her gaze. The kitchen was dim, the broken light creating angles that didn't exist in full illumination. The corner where the fridge met the counter seemed deeper, darker. A soft scrape, like a chair dragging slowly across tile, echoed from somewhere behind the fridge. He froze. Probably nothing," Mara said, but her voice had gone tight. Her fingers drummed nervously on the counter. The apartment phone rang suddenly, sharp and unexpected. Tom jumped. Mara's phone buzzed too. Both screens displayed unknown numbers. Mara frowned. "That's weird. We don't get calls from anyone we don't know." They glanced at each other. Tom's hand hovered over the handset. In the pause, the scrape sound returned, this time closer, almost at the fridge. "I'm just gonna check," Tom said, voice quieter now. He moved toward the kitchen slowly, knees bent slightly, as if weight and posture could protect him. Mara followed, stepping behind him. There was nothing, just the fridge, its surface slick with condensation. No chair, no one. Only the hum of the storm, the faint drip of water from the ceiling vent, and their own breathing. Mara exhaled, shaky. "It's just your brain, that's all. Storm, darkness, shadows." "Yeah," Tom said, though he didn't fully believe it. His eyes kept darting to the corner near the fridge, as if expecting it to move. Then the lights flickered again, this time longer, maybe a full 15 seconds. In the pause, the apartment felt compressed, heavier. The soft scent of something faintly metallic rose again. They looked at each other, silently acknowledging that both had felt it. "I guess we waited out," Mara said, though she didn't sound convinced. "Or call Harold," Tom suggested. He knows this building. Probably has a portable light or something. Mara shook her head. No, we wait. Just let's not make it worse. And there it was. The choice. Wait and hope, or investigate, or pull out the phone and disrupt the thin barrier of normalcy that still held the apartment together. The storm pressed against the windows like an unwelcome witness, and the longer the light stayed off, the heavier the room felt. The lights stayed off longer than either of them expected. 15 seconds stretched to 30. Then, a full minute. Tom's fingers hovered over the breaker box again, hesitant. The storm outside had grown louder, rain lashing the windows in a chaotic rhythm. Wind rattled the frames. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor's door slammed. Okay, that's not normal, Mara said, her voice tighter than usual. She was packing, barefoot on the tile, water dripping from her hair onto the counter. We can't just wait this out forever. Tom rubbed his forehead. I know, but the breakers are fine. Nothing's tripped. I don't see anything visibly wrong. Maybe it's a surge issue with the building. Maybe, Mara replied, but her tone suggested she wasn't convinced. Tom, there, that smell again. Stronger. Metal, like burning wire or worse. He nodded, swallowing hard. The metallic scent had intensified subtly, sharp enough to make his stomach knot. This was exactly the kind of uncertainty he hated, the invisible, unmeasurable kind. One that made his mind race through worst-case scenarios, even if the rational part told him it was probably nothing. Let's grab flashlights, he suggested. He moved toward the cabinet, but the kitchen light still didn't return. Only the storm's dim gray filtered through the window. He found 2 old flashlights in the drawer, batteries likely corroded, and flicked them on. Weak beams cut narrow slices through the darkness, bouncing off the walls, across the fridge, over the counters. Mara shivered. Do you hear that? A soft thump came from the apartment above them. Then another. Not rhythmic, not consistent, but deliberate. Something heavy moving. Tom's heart sank. Their building wasn't well maintained. Neighbors were usually quiet. But this sounded different. Deliberate. Human-sized. Close. Maybe Harold's up there, Tom said, though his voice lacked conviction. Myra leaned closer, gripping his arm. Or maybe not. The choice Tom faced now wasn't abstract. The flickering lights had escalated into a full blackout. The smell had gotten sharper, and there were unaccountable sounds both above and behind the walls. He could call the building management or the police, but storms made response times unpredictable. Or he could check the electrical panel in the basement himself. The risk, descending into the lower floors, the building creaking with every gust, knowing there might be someone else moving down there. Or worse, some unseen hazard in the dark. I'm going down, Tom said finally, exhaling. I need to see what's happening at the main panel. It could be dangerous if it's the wiring. And You always have to be the one to control it, Mara interrupted sharply. You think you can fix everything, but what if it's not just wiring? What if it's... She stopped herself, swallowing. We need backup. You going alone is stupid. Her words hit him. She wasn't wrong. His private fear, losing control, clashed with the practical reality that going alone might be dangerous. The basement was narrow, pipes overhead, low-hanging beams. Any slip on the wet concrete could mean injury. And if the smell was strong down there, he might be looking at inhaling fumes from an electrical short or a gas leak. He looked at Mara. If I don't check it, I'm not helping if something happens. And if you do check it, we might end up trapped or hurt, Mara said. I'm telling you, we wait. We call someone. But the storm's worst outside. If we wait, the whole system could fail. Fuses could blow, wiring could spark. Mara cut him off, voice sharp, almost frantic. Or someone could be in the building. You're thinking about wires, and I'm thinking about people moving around in this storm in our dark apartment. Don't act like you don't know it could happen. Tom froze. The thought lodged in his brain, unwelcome but possible. Portland had its share of opportunistic burglars. Storms, blackouts, prime conditions for someone to exploit. The flickering had been inside the apartment first. If someone had been casing units, he felt suddenly exposed. They stared at each other, silent except for the wind and rain. The storm pounded like a drum against the roof, each beat echoing through the walls. Tom could feel the cold seeping into his arms through the thin t-shirt he had worn all day. Mara's face was pale in the flashlight's weak glow, eyes sharp, alert, unwilling to blink. Then came the scrape again, closer now, unmistakable. Not above, below, from the direction of the basement stairwell. Shit, Mara whispered. Her fingers dug into his arm. That's not the wiring, that's someone, or something moving. They're down there. Tom's stomach dropped. This was exactly the scenario he had dreaded, but never articulated. The invisible uncertainty had turned human, tangible. Every step toward the basement now carried real risk. The storm outside could mask any sounds. The darkness could hide any intruder. The weak flashlights were barely enough to navigate the stairs. And yet, the thought of doing nothing felt unbearable. Mara grabbed the flashlight from him and handed it over. We go together, she said. If you insist on doing this, we do it as a team. Tom nodded, taking it. But the unease didn't leave. Their choice, descend and confront the unknown, or wait and hope, had just turned urgent. The metallic smell now was stronger in the hallway, rising like smoke, tangy and acrid. The scrape repeated again, heavier, almost deliberate, somewhere in the stairwell leading down. Tom exhaled. All right, let's go slowly. Step by step, no rushing. Mara's hand brushed his shoulder, trembling slightly. Careful. Don't underestimate this. Whatever it is, it's not wiring alone. They reached the top of the stairwell. Darkness swallowed the steps. Water pooled in small patches, glinting in their flashlight beams. The scrape came again, sharper this time, like nails on concrete, or a chair being dragged in the dark. Neither spoke for a long moment. They simply stared at the blackness, hearing only their own breathing, the storm, and that deliberate scrape. The basement door sat ajar, shadows pooling like ink beneath it. One step forward would commit them to the unknown. One hesitation, and whatever waited below might move first. The basement stairs loomed like a shadowed tunnel. Each step Tom and Mara took was careful, tentative. The slick concrete glistened under their flashlights, puddles reflecting distorted beams of weak light. The metallic smell grew sharper with each step downward, making their nostrils flare. Tom's hand brushed against the railing, damp with condensation, and his pulse quickened not from the cold, but from the uncertainty of what lay below. At the bottom, the basement spread out wider than expected. Exposed pipes ran along the ceiling, some dripping, some groaning under the storm's pressure. The walls were cinder block, patched in places with gray cement that didn't quite match. Old wooden shelves lined the perimeter, cluttered with paint cans, boxes labeled storage, and forgotten cleaning supplies. The main breaker panel sat against the far wall, partially obscured by a stack of cardboard boxes. Tom moved toward it. Mara stayed near the stairs, flashlight in hand, scanning the dark corners. "Careful," she murmured. "Something about this place feels off." The first attempt was methodical but frustrating. Tom opened the breaker panel, flipping switches, checking each connection. Sparks didn't fly, wires didn't smoke, but the metallic smell seemed to intensify near the main lines. Mara noticed a faint, wet streak on the concrete floor leading toward the panel. "Water," she said quietly. "Electrical panel. Water, it's not safe." Tom froze. Her words registered like a warning bell. "We're fine. I can keep this minimal. Just check continuity. See if any lines are overloaded." He crouched, flashlight angled over the panel, fingers brushing the cold metal. Suddenly, a thump echoed from the far corner, sharp, deliberate, like someone had kicked a metal bucket. Mara jumped, flashlight beam darting toward the noise. Nothing. Only shadows stretching along the walls. Her breath came fast. "It's someone. There's someone down here," she whispered. Tom shook his head. "No, it's the storm. Pipes, water hitting metal, that's all. Look." He tapped a loose pipe along the ceiling. Water dripped into a paint can, clanging loudly. Mara exhaled shakily. "Okay, yeah. That explains it," she said, though the relief didn't last long. They continued, crawling under low-hanging pipes to access the back of the panel. Tom noticed corrosion near a junction box, a small gap in insulation where wires peeked through. "This could be it," he muttered. "Overloaded line. I can secure it temporarily." Attempt 1, partial success. They stabilized one junction, but the metallic smell persisted, and the flickering upstairs hadn't stopped. Worse, in the corner behind them, a stack of boxes shifted slightly, just enough for Mara to gasp. She shone the flashlight, catching a stray cat darting out from under the shelves, hissing. The relief was almost absurd, but it left both of them shaken. Their nerves were frayed, adrenaline pumped through Tom's arms, making his hands shake as he worked. They climbed back up 2 flights of stairs, wet and tired. Tom ran a hand through his hair, damp from the basement humidity. Mara massaged her shoulders. "You're sure we didn't miss anything?" she asked. "Pretty sure," Tom said. But the truth was, he felt exposed, exhausted, and tense. The storm outside seemed louder on the 2nd floor. Rain drummed against the windows, rattling frames. Shadows pooled in corners. And somewhere, maybe above them, a soft thud hinted at movement they hadn't accounted for. They tried a second approach, a controlled test. Tom wanted to flip the main switch on and off while Mara watched, to see if the apartment's circuit would react predictably. The goal: determine if the flickering was isolated or systemic. Mara stood at a safe distance, flashlight angled, heart pounding. He flipped the main switch. The lights flickered briefly on the 2nd floor. Then, the entire hallway upstairs went black. Not a flicker, dead. Tom froze. "What?" Mara pointed. "The hallway light. It just went out completely." Tom's stomach sank. They ran upstairs, flashlights slicing through the black. The apartment was silent except for the storm, but the hallway lights were stubbornly dead. The smell was sharper now, metallic and acrid. Tom's chest tightened. The problem wasn't just a panel. It was a system failure and possibly water intrusion. They heard it again, scraping, deliberate, from above the ceiling near the stairwell. Tom flicked his flashlight upward. Nothing. Mara crouched, ear to the floor, breathing heavy. "It's in the walls," she whispered. "Or the pipes. Something moving." The misdirection came next. A shadow flitted across the stairwell from the corner of Mara's vision. She screamed. Tom spun. A broom had fallen from the coat closet, landing upright against the wall, casting an eerie silhouette. They laughed shakily, the tension releasing slightly, but it was only temporary. The reality, the basement, the storm, the building's old wiring, and the strange noises were combining into a web that tightened around them. Exhausted and frayed, they returned to the basement one final time, knowing retreat wasn't an option. The flickering upstairs indicated something urgent, possibly dangerous, was still unresolved. They moved side by side, flashlights scanning every shelf, every low ceiling beam. Puddles reflected their beams, making the narrow aisles seem endless. The metallic smell grew stronger near a corner where a low-hanging pipe had corroded. Tom paused. "There's a junction box here, probably the source, but it's partially submerged in water." He swallowed hard. "We can't leave it like this," but touching it wrong, his voice trailed off. Mara shone the light closer, face tense. "We'll have to risk it. There's no going back now." The storm hammered above. Water pooled in channels along the floor. The basement was a trap. The only way forward led through standing water, corroded wires, and weak lighting. Tom's pulse raced, Mara's shoulders shook with tension. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but the apartment upstairs depended on them, and the building's electrical system was unstable. One step further, and retreat would become impossible. The faint scrape from above, the metallic tang in the air, and the uncertainty of whether the system could fail at any moment pressed down like physical weight. They advanced together, knowing the decision had been made. Whatever awaited at the next corner could not be ignored. The basement smelled sharp, acrid, metallic. Every breath Tom took burned in his nostrils. His flashlight trembled in his hand, though he tried to steady it against the damp cinderblock wall. The junction box sat ahead, partially submerged in a puddle of water that reflected the flickering light from the storm's brief flashes through the basement window. One misstep, one careless touch, and a spark could turn the water into a conductor of disaster. Mara crouched beside him, scanning the narrow aisles with her own flashlight. Her knuckles were white from gripping it so tightly. "Tom, it's too close to the water. If you touch it, we could." "I know," he said, cutting her off, "but it's the only way." He crouched lower, pulling his jacket off to use as insulation, though he knew it was imperfect. Every muscle tensed, every thought calculating. Touch the box minimally, flip the main line to stabilize, then retreat immediately. The scrape echoed again, louder this time, from the corner near the shelves. Both of them froze, flashlights darting. A cardboard box shifted. Out jumped a rat, squealing, scrabbling against the wall before disappearing into a corner. Mara exhaled shakily. "Not a person," she whispered, voice cracking. But the relief was fleeting. The real danger remained: the box, the water, the unstable wiring. Tom knelt, careful, balancing on a patch of dry concrete. His fingers brushed the junction cover. Sparks hissed. A jolt ran up his arm, burning through the jacket. He yelped, jerking back, and Mara grabbed him before he fell into the puddle. "You okay?" she asked, panic sharp in her voice. Yeah, but it's hot. I think a wire live under the water. If we leave it." The scrape returned, closer now, unmistakable. Tom realized it wasn't environmental this time. Someone or something was moving in the stairwell above the basement door. He spun toward the stairs, flashlight shaking. Mara leaned against the wall for support, heart racing. "Tom, we need to decide," she said. "Do we finish this now or risk staying stuck?" Before he could answer, a figure appeared at the top of the stairs. Harold, soaked from the rain, holding a lantern. "I heard yelling. Thought you might be in trouble." Tom's jaw clenched. Relief and irritation warred. "Harold, don't touch anything, just stay there." But Harold, old and cautious, but decisive, had already stepped down. His lantern beam revealed a glimmer on the junction box, a frayed wire, partially submerged, hissing with energy. Water pooled around it, conductive and dangerous. The metallic smell intensified. Tom glanced at Mara. "We have to improvise. I can't reach it safely, not like this." We need to dry around it. Mara nodded, scanning the basement for something absorbent. Her eyes landed on old towels stacked on a nearby shelf. She ran over, grabbed them, and began wringing them over the puddle, trying to create a dry patch. Water splashed over her hands, slicking the floor. The hissing grew louder. Sparks danced over the exposed wire. Tom could feel the heat radiating. He took a deep breath and lunged, gripping the dry concrete patch with one hand, his flashlight in the other. Fingers trembling, he flipped the switch to cut power at the box. The electricity surged through the remaining wet wires. A loud crack echoed. Sparks shot across the puddle. Mara ducked instinctively, shielding her face. Harold leapt back against the wall, lantern swinging, casting wild shadows that danced across the ceiling and walls. For a moment, nothing moved but their own breathing. Then, the lights flickered weakly upstairs. The metallic smell diminished slightly. The hissing stopped. Silence settled, punctuated only by dripping water and the storm's distant roar. Exhausted, soaked, and shaking, they all sank to the basement floor. Mara's hands trembled as she wiped water off her face. Tom flexed his fingers, numb and aching. A small burn mark on his forearm where a spark had kissed his skin. Harold grunted, leaning heavily against a shelf, lantern swinging lazily in his hand. "You did it," Mara whispered. Her voice trembled, a mix of relief and lingering adrenaline. Tom didn't answer immediately. He was too aware of the lingering danger. The old wiring, the water still pooling, the storm raging outside, and the creaking building around them. Victory had come at a cost: minor injuries, frayed nerves, and a basement that now felt hostile rather than familiar. Harold finally broke the silence. "That was reckless," he said, tone sharp, but not unkind. "But you fixed it, sort of." Tom rubbed the burn on his arm. "Sort of." Harold shook his head. "Old wiring, water, could have fried you. Still could be some hidden shorts upstairs. You need to dry everything and check each floor before it's safe." Mara exhaled slowly, glancing at the puddles. "We're not out of danger yet, but it's better than before." Tom nodded, knowing she was right. They had confronted the immediate hazard. They had stabilized the junction box, but the storm outside and the building's fragility meant vigilance was far from over. Every sense remained tuned to the shadows and the faint metallic tang that lingered. They started back up the stairs, careful, exhausted, each step a reminder of what might have gone wrong. The apartment lights flickered on again, weakly at first, then steadily. The metallic smell faded, replaced by the damp, earthy scent of the storm seeping through the walls. They collapsed onto the couch, soaked, shivering, adrenaline slowly draining. Tom's arm throbbed where the spark had touched him. Mara rubbed her temples. Harold sank into a chair, shaking his head. No one spoke immediately. The storm continued its relentless rhythm, but inside, the apartment felt quieter, safer. but changed. They had faced danger head-on, relied on improvisation and bravery, and survived, but the scars, both physical and emotional, were real. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the streets of Portland slick and glimmering under weak sunlight. The air smelled of wet asphalt and pine from the nearby park. Inside the apartment, Tom and Mara moved like ghosts, bodies stiff from adrenaline and cold. Tom's forearm throbbed where the spark had kissed him, a small burn already blistering. He had wrapped it in a damp towel the night before, then in a bandage from the first aid kit Harold had insisted they keep on hand. "Better get some antiseptic today," Harold had said, shaking his head as he left, lantern in hand, warning them again about the building's wiring. Tom nodded absently, feeling both grateful and uneasy. The burn was minor, but the memory of heat and the crackling surge lingered in his mind like a warning. Mara sat on the edge of the couch, drying her hair with a towel, staring out the window. Her hands were still shaking slightly. "I can't believe that rat nearly gave me a heart attack," she said, voice quiet, attempting humor. Tom smiled faintly, but the tension didn't leave. They had called the building management once the lights were stable. A repair crew would inspect the wiring and water damage in the coming days, but no one had arrived yet. Tom had emailed photos of the corroded junction and puddles. He wasn't entirely confident the crew would catch every hazard. The storm, the darkness, and the basement had felt like a trap, and the apartment still seemed to hum with latent danger, even in daylight. Harold stopped by one more time, checking in while carrying a small toolkit. "I'd get this wiring checked before another storm," he said bluntly, peering at the now dry junction box. "You got lucky last night. Could have been worse." Tom nodded, rubbing his forearm again. I know. He tried to focus on practicalities, drying floors, ensuring breakers stayed safe. But a part of him couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability. He had always liked to control situations, and last night had stripped that illusion bare. Mara spoke next, voice low. "I'm still jumpy. Even hearing the faucet drip just now made me flinch." Her eyes darted to the shadowy corners of the room. The adrenaline that had propelled her through the basement hadn't dissipated. It lingered in small, insidious ways. "I think it's going to take me a while to feel normal here again." Tom reached over, resting a hand on hers. "It's going to be okay. We survived." "Yes," Mara said, squeezing his hand lightly, though her eyes remained wary. "But okay is this? Not yet." They spent the morning cleaning up minor water damage, moving boxes from the kitchen corner where water had seeped. The smell of damp plaster and metal lingered faintly, even as they opened windows to air out the apartment. Outside, neighbors stepped cautiously over puddles, the streets littered with leaves and small branches knocked down in the storm. The world seemed normal again, but it was the kind of normal that bore cracks, faint but undeniable. Later, Tom went to the pharmacy to pick up antiseptic cream and bandages. Mara stayed behind, organizing her studio space while keeping one eye on the apartment wiring. Neither spoke much during this time. The silence carried the residue of tension, a subtle, shared understanding of how close they had come to real danger. By evening, the apartment lights were stable. The hum of electricity seemed innocuous now, almost comforting. Yet, in the corners, shadows lingered. The metallic tang had dissipated, but hadn't completely vanished. Sometimes it was strongest near the junction box, like a faint echo of what had happened. They didn't mention it, but each noticed it at some point. An unspoken acknowledgement that the basement's threat had left a mark on the apartment itself, as though the storm and darkness had transferred a residue of unease. Tom and Mara talked about the events only briefly. They recounted the sequence to each other and to Harold in clipped, factual tones, leaving out some of the more terrifying details. They didn't want to dwell. Dwelling only made it feel more real, more permanent. Their strategy became routine, practical, measured, careful, keeping one hand on control while leaving certain thoughts unspoken. Yet despite the ordinary rhythm of coffee, dishes, and the soft hum of lights, both remained acutely aware of how fragile normalcy could be. Tom's desire to control everything had not disappeared. It had been tempered by the memory of vulnerability. Mara's vigilance had sharpened. She checked corners instinctively, noticed every flicker, every creak. Their emotional scars were subtle but persistent, embedded in the small, everyday habits they now approached differently. As night fell, they settled on the couch, exhausted but alive. The storm had passed entirely. The apartment was quiet, except for the soft whir of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of a clock. Yet, in a corner of the basement, near the now dry junction box, a small puddle remained. Its surface shimmered faintly under the slant of the hallway light. Neither of them mentioned it, and perhaps it was nothing. But in the residual silence, with the rain now gone and the lights stable, it was enough to remind them that danger, once present, never fully leaves. The shadows fade for now, but the stories never end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and join our community of horror lovers. If you're hungry for more, check out the next video. Just remember, the scariest part is often the one you don't see coming.